Did the family group chat. Doctor says surgery's tomorrow. Can someone be with me? My sister replied, we have dinner plans, good luck. My mom added, don't be dramatic, it's just surgery. And I simply wrote back, no worries. My name is Rachel Monroe. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Because what happens when the people you need most laugh at the very thing that could end you? The phone slipped from my hands that night. Not from shock, from clarity. Their words weren't sharp, they were hollow. Hollow like an echo in an empty church, where you realize the silence is louder than the prayer. I stared at the hospital ceiling, for taped to my arm, monitors beeping with indifferent rhythm. My family wasn't coming. They had reservations, selfies to post, a world where I was an afterthought. So I whispered, to no one in particular, then I'll stop asking. The nurse adjusted my blanket, eyes gentle in a way blood never gave me. Strangers showed me more presence than blood. That irony burned deeper than the incision waiting for me at dawn. But I didn't rage. I didn't beg. I chose stillness. And stillness breeds clarity. That night, as the city hummed beyond the glass, I signed a release form. Media contacts. Public interest request. Quiet preparations that didn't need applause, just timing. Because while they clinked glasses at dinner, a news ticker was already building its headline. While they scrolled menus, a newsroom was stitching my name to a story larger than their neglect. And when the cameras lit up, they wouldn't see me as the fragile daughter begging for company. They'd see the truth they dismissed broadcast across every screen they held in their hands. No raised voices. No slammed doors. Just the weight of their absence turned into evidence. And at 9:12 p.m., when the segment aired, they dropped their forks. They dropped their phones. Because on the news, I wasn't a patient anymore. I was a headline. And the headline had one caption they couldn't control. Left alone before surgery. Family missing. World watching. That was the moment silence became my stage. The clip was less than 3 minutes. A reporter outside the hospital, voice steady, words slicing. 29-year-old patient Rachel Monroe faces surgery tomorrow morning. Her story? A family group chat where she asked for support and was told, don't be dramatic. Now, as she prepares alone, strangers have begun offering what her own relatives would not. The anchor nodded gravely. The image flashed. My text thread, anonymized but visible enough. The timestamps glowed like scars. I didn't leak it in anger. I leaked it in truth. The world loves receipts. And my family had given me the clearest ones. Across town, I imagined them frozen at their dinner table. My sister's manicured hand gripping her phone too tight. My mother whispering she wouldn't, even as her face drained of color. My father shaking his head, muttering about overreaction, about airing laundry. But the laundry was theirs, not mine. Because while they dismissed me as dramatic, the public saw something else. Abandonment. By the next morning, donations were pouring in. Flowers filled my hospital room. Messages from strangers painted my walls with more love than blood ever had. A local support group offered to sit with me through surgery, rotating shifts, so I wouldn't face the operating room alone. The hospital staff smiled. You've got more people outside waiting than most politicians. And still, the group chat remained silent. No apology. No arrival. Just 3 dots that never turned into words. At 6:45 a.m., a nurse wheeled me down the hall. Cameras clicked from the sidewalk outside. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just let the story breathe. Because for the first time, my pain wasn't hidden in the quiet corners of family neglect. It was public, documented, witnessed. And the world was asking the one question my family never did. How could they leave her like that? I closed my eyes under the surgical lights, steady, calm. Not because I trusted them, but because I trusted silence, the kind that exposes. And when I woke up, still breathing, I knew something had shifted forever. The surgery had repaired more than my body. It had carved my family's name into shame, and I hadn't lifted more than a finger. When I opened my eyes, the room was filled with flowers. Bouquets pressed against the window ledge, cards tucked into every vase. The machines hummed softly, but the real noise was outside. Reporters still camped at the curb, community members lighting candles in quiet solidarity. I wasn't alone anymore, except, of course, by blood. My phone buzzed with hundreds of messages, but not from the people I once called family. They were silent, paralyzed, too late to erase what had already gone public. Then, a notification broke the silence of the group chat. Mom. Rachel, please take this down. People are asking questions. My sister added, You're embarrassing us. No one needs to know private things. Private. That was the word they clung to, as though neglect becomes smaller if hidden behind walls. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because every stranger sending love saw what my family refused to, that I deserved to be held, not hidden. By evening, the local paper ran a follow-up. Community rallies behind patient abandoned before surgery. Photos of volunteers standing outside my window, holding signs. We're with you, Rachel. And in the middle of that article was one quiet line that changed everything. Family declined to comment. Declined. Not denied. Not defended. Declined. At the gala dinners they loved so much. At the church pews they filled every Sunday. At the grocery aisles where their neighbors lingered, whispers began. Did you see the news? How could they? She begged for someone to be there. My family had always thrived on image, on control, on applause. Now their silence was a billboard. I lay back against the hospital pillow, for dripping steadily, and realized something. Revenge wasn't about loud vengeance. It was about letting the truth live where everyone could see it. And truth has a way of growing roots. By the third day, my surgeon visited, smiling. You'll heal fine. But you should know people are still outside. They say they'll stay until you walk out of here. And I smiled for the first time in weeks. Because my family may have left me at the table, but the world had pulled up chairs. And I wasn't planning to leave quietly when I finally stood again. By the time I was discharged, the crowd outside had doubled. Strangers who had never said my name before held handmade signs with it painted in bold colors. Rachel Strong. No one should face surgery alone. I was wheeled through the front doors, not the back exit my family would have preferred. Cameras clicked. Reporters shouted questions, but I didn't answer. I simply smiled, nodded, and let the silence do what words never could. That evening, the news ran a split screen. On one side, me, being wheeled out, greeted by flowers and applause. On the other, my sister slipping out of a restaurant, her hand over her face as reporters followed. She shoved past microphones. We had plans that night. We didn't know it was serious. But the receipts were still there, text plastered across the broadcast. Don't be dramatic. It's just surgery. My mom tried, too. On camera, she forced a smile, insisting, We love our daughter. People are twisting this. Yet the video clip rolled again, the proof undeniable. For the first time in my life, their words didn't overpower mine. My truth wasn't buried. It was replayed in high definition, over and over, until no denial could breathe. Sponsors reached out. A nonprofit asked me to speak at a medical fundraiser about loneliness in hospitals. One journalist called it the story that made a city question what family really means. And while the world wrapped me in compassion, my family wrapped themselves in shame. Invitations to dinner stopped. Neighbors no longer smiled politely. The social pedestal they worshipped crumbled beneath them, piece by piece. But I never shouted. I never demanded an apology. I simply let the mirror face them, day after day, until they couldn't look away. Late one night, my phone lit up again. My sister. Rachel, please. End this. We can't go anywhere without people staring. Mom, you've made your point. Enough. But what they never understood was this: it was never about punishment. It was about proof. Proof that I wasn't invisible. Proof that their neglect wasn't just my burden to swallow in silence. Proof that the world sees what they pretended didn't exist. I turned off the phone and set it face down on the nightstand. For once, I didn't need to answer, because every screen in the city already had. The invitations came quickly. A talk show wanted me on their morning segment. A podcast asked for my voice. A university health panel emailed about resilience. Each message carried the same theme. Your story matters. People need to hear it. I thought back to the night I texted my family for help, words small and trembling. Doctor says surgery's tomorrow. Can someone be with me? I had asked for presents. I received rejection. Now the world was asking me to speak, not as a patient, but as a witness. When I walked onto that first studio stage, lights blazing, microphone clipped, the host introduced me not as a victim, but as a voice. Rachel Monroe, whose courage sparked a national conversation about what it means to show up. The applause wasn't for pity. It was for truth. Meanwhile, my family's silence deepened into isolation. At grocery stores, neighbors turned their carts. At church, pews shifted when they walked in. Invitations evaporated. Their dinner plans, so important the night before my surgery, vanished entirely. And still, the group chat remained. Empty. 3 dots never appeared again. But I kept each screenshot. Every dismissive line preserved like evidence in a museum of neglect. Because the story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every person who had ever asked for love and been told they were too much, too dramatic, too inconvenient. The nonprofit fundraiser was the final seal. Hundreds gathered in a hall strung with lights, faces glowing with empathy. I stood at the podium, not shaky, but steady. I thought I was alone, I began. But being left alone taught me something. Silence is loudest when it's shared. Applause swelled. In the back of the hall, I saw them, my mother, my sister, my father, standing in the shadows, uninvited but curious, watching the crowd that had once been theirs. Their eyes weren't angry. They were hollow, searching for a way back into a world that had already closed its door. I didn't call them out. I didn't even acknowledge them, because revenge wasn't pointing fingers. It was standing in a room full of love they once withheld, and knowing they had to watch it bloom without them. That night, as the lights dimmed and the applause lingered, I realized I didn't just survive surgery. I had rewritten the story of who showed up, and the ending was still unfolding. The headlines shifted. No longer abandoned before surgery. Now they read, from patient to advocate, Rachel Monroe speaks for the forgotten. It felt surreal. My pain turned into power, my neglect transformed into momentum. Hospitals invited me to consult on family support programs. Organizations wanted my input on policies. Strangers in waiting rooms recognized me and whispered, "That's her." But back home, my family sat in a silence of their own making. My sister tried damage control online. She posted filtered photos, captions about family first and together through it all. But every comment was the same. "Where were you when she asked?" She deleted the post within hours. My mother, once the center of every social circle, withdrew. No brunches. No garden parties. Neighbors whispered when she passed. The pedestal she guarded so fiercely was gone. My father? He never messaged. His silence wasn't absence, it was pride refusing to bend. But even he couldn't escape the looks in grocery aisles, the newspaper folded too neatly on the porch. And me? I didn't chase them, didn't block them. I left the group chat exactly as it was, frozen in time, 3 lines carved into digital stone. "We have dinner plans. Don't be dramatic. No worries." That chat became a monument, not of rage, but of revelation. One evening, I was invited back to the hospital, this time not as a patient, but as a guest of honor. They unveiled a new program, pairing volunteers with patients facing procedures alone. A nurse pulled me aside. "This exists because of you," she said. I thought about the night I lay under fluorescent light, begging silently for someone to walk through the door. Now, dozens of doors would open for others. And my family? They had to live in a city where my name was spoken with admiration, while theirs had become a cautionary tale. I never confronted them directly. I didn't need to. Every headline, every panel, every program was a mirror they couldn't turn away from. Because the cruelest punishment isn't exclusion. It's being forced to watch the one you dismissed become everything you pretended they weren't. And the mirror was only getting brighter. The gala was next, the biggest event of the year, and my name was at the top of the program. They would be there. They always were. But this time, they wouldn't recognize the stage. Because it was mine. The city gala had always been my family's crown jewel, the one night they could dress in borrowed elegance and bask in borrowed admiration. For years, I'd been their silent accessory, standing behind them, smiling faintly while they collected applause that was never theirs. But this year, the program bore a different name at the center. Mine. Keynote speaker, Rachel Monroe, patient advocate. The hall shimmered with chandeliers, sequins, polished shoes. My mother arrived in her usual pearls, though her eyes carried exhaustion no diamond could conceal. My sister's smile was brittle, plastered too wide, while my father stayed 2 steps behind, avoiding every camera lens that turned his way. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage in a simple navy dress. Not dazzling, not loud, steady. The kind of presence that doesn't need sparkle to shine. Applause thundered. I set my notes down and looked out at the sea of faces. My family's table sat near the front. I didn't linger on them. Instead, I began. 3 months ago, I asked a simple question in a family group chat. Doctor says surgery's tomorrow. Can someone be with me? The answer was silence. Or worse, dismissal. A murmur rippled through the audience. I held up my phone, the screen glowing with the screenshot. The words were blurred to protect privacy, but clear enough to carry the weight. We have dinner plans. Don't be dramatic. Gasps broke across the hall. But here's the truth, I continued, voice steady. Family isn't always who shares your blood. Sometimes, family is who shows up when it matters most. And when blood turned away, strangers became my lifeline. That's why I stand here tonight, not to shame, but to remind, presence is the greatest gift we can give each other. The room erupted in applause, rising to its feet. Cameras flashed. The host wiped away a tear. At the front table, my mother bowed her head. My sister's hands fidgeted in her lap. My father's jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the tablecloth. I didn't gloat. I didn't point. I just stood in the light they thought I'd never touch. Because revenge doesn't always shout. Sometimes it stands on a stage, steady and unbroken, while those who once laughed sit silent in the dark. And yet, one more chapter waited. Not for the cameras, not for the crowd, but for the quiet morning after, when truth would follow them home. The morning after the gala, the headlines were everywhere. From neglect to keynote, Rachel Monroe redefines family. Photos of me at the podium spread across every feed, my words quoted in bold. Presence is the greatest gift. I didn't check the group chat. I didn't need to. Because in every coffee shop, on every porch, in every whispered conversation across the city, the verdict had already been spoken. My mother avoided her morning walk. The neighbors no longer waved. My sister locked her socials, comments drowning her captions. My father folded the newspaper with shaking hands, unable to stop the front page from staring back at him. Meanwhile, I sipped my coffee in quiet peace. My phone buzzed with new messages, invitations to speak, thank you notes from strangers, volunteers signing up for the hospital program born from my story. The same world they thought too busy to care had cared enough to lift me higher than their silence ever could. But I never sought applause. My revenge was simpler, sharper. To exist loudly in the space they left empty. I left the group chat untouched, 3 lines frozen forever. We have dinner plans. Don't be dramatic. No worries. A digital gravestone of their choice. That evening, I walked past the mirror in my hallway and paused. For years, I had looked into it and seen absence. Their absence, reflected back as my own inadequacy. Now I saw only myself. Whole. Standing. Seen. My family wanted me quiet, erased, compliant. Instead, I became undeniable. Not by screaming, not by fighting, but by letting their neglect speak louder than I ever could, until the whole world heard it. That's the thing about silence. It can bury you, or it can crown you. And when the story closed, it crowned me.